I'm Natalie Parker, 28 years old, and I was just told I couldn't join my family's annual luxury cruise because no failures allowed. Despite my PhD in marine biology, my family only saw my temporary unemployment as proof I'd made wrong choices. They valued designer clothes and prestigious job titles, not passion or purpose. Little did they know, that exclusive cruise ship they were so excited about? I had a surprising connection to it that would change everything. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're viewing from, and don't forget to like and subscribe to hear how I turn the tables on my status-obsessed family. Growing up in Brookline, one of Boston's wealthiest suburbs, meant constant awareness of status and success. The Parker family name carried weight in local social circles, primarily due to my parents' relentless pursuit of perfection in all visible aspects of life. My mother, Eleanor Parker, was the quintessential socialite. Her calendar brimmed with charity galas, country club luncheons, and board meetings for cultural institutions. She measured worth in brand names, social connections, and the prestigious schools her children attended. Her perfectionism extended to everything from our home's immaculate appearance to the precise way holiday cards were addressed. Nothing escaped her critical eye, especially not her children's achievements or failures. My father, Richard Parker, built his reputation as the brilliant CEO of Beacon Hill Investment Group. His 60-hour work weeks and ruthless business approach made him a feared and respected figure in Boston's financial district. While less vocal than my mother about status, his quiet expectations were equally crushing. Success, in his view, meant following his path into finance or law, nothing else. Then there was my brother Maxwell, the golden child of the family. 2 years older than me, Max embraced every opportunity presented to him. Star lacrosse player at Phillips Exeter Academy, summa cum laude graduate from Princeton, and now pursuing his MBA at Harvard Business School while working part-time at our father's firm. The Parker heir apparent checked every box my parents valued. And then there was me. From an early age, I gravitated towards science rather than social climbing. While my parents dragged us to the vineyard each summer to mingle with the right people, I spent hours collecting seashells and studying tide pools. My bedroom walls featured marine life posters instead of pop stars. For my 12th birthday, I begged for a high-powered microscope instead of the designer handbag my mother had selected. Natalie, darling, what will people think? Became my mother's refrain whenever I expressed interest in marine biology. Our family vacations perfectly encapsulated our value system. Annual winter trips to Aspen where my mother coordinated our ski outfits for optimal family photos. Spring breaks in Palm Beach at clubs where membership waitlists stretched years. And of course, the pinnacle, summer cruises on luxury liners where my parents could showcase our family's success to friends and business associates who joined the voyage. These weren't educational experiences, but networking opportunities. While docked in Caribbean ports, my father arranged business meetings. My mother organized cocktail parties with other prominent families. Maxwell shadowed Dad, absorbing the art of making connections. Only my father's sister, Aunt Catherine, seemed to understand me. During one family Christmas gathering when I was 15, she found me reading a book about coral reefs. "You know, Natalie," she whispered, "there are more important things than the Parker definition of success." She became my secret ally, sending me books about female marine biologists and later helping me apply to research programs my parents dismissed. When I was accepted to Brown University's marine science program instead of Harvard's economics department, Aunt Catherine was the only family member who celebrated my choice. Now at 28, despite completing my PhD in marine biology with a specialization in coral reef ecosystems, I found myself in what my family considered failure territory. The prestigious Williams Marine Research Institute had just rejected my fellowship application, leaving me temporarily unemployed while I searched for other research positions. In the Parker family hierarchy, unemployment equaled failure, regardless of my academic accomplishments or the competitive nature of research funding. My current apartment in Cambridge was modest compared to my parents' Brookline mansion or Maxwell's luxury condo in Boston's Seaport District. I drove a used Prius instead of the BMW my parents offered to buy if I'd come to my senses and pursue a real career. By Parker standards, I was the family disappointment, the cautionary tale of what happens when you follow passion instead of pragmatism. What they didn't understand was that my definition of success had nothing to do with stock portfolios or social calendars. I measured achievement in research findings, conservation impact, and the pursuit of knowledge that could help protect our oceans. In my world, I wasn't failing at all. I was simply playing a different game with different rules. The monthly Parker family dinner was a tradition as rigid as my mother's perfectly maintained smile. The third Sunday of each month, attendance mandatory, business casual attire minimum. These gatherings at my parents' Brookline home served as status updates for the family brand as much as actual family connection. April's dinner began like any other. Our housekeeper Angela's impeccable table setting gleamed under the dining room chandelier. Maxwell arrived 15 minutes early to discuss market trends with Dad in his study. I arrived exactly on time, knowing my mother would check her watch. "Natalie, darling," my mother greeted me with her kisses. "That blouse is interesting." Her eyes flicked disapprovingly over my button-down shirt from a sustainable clothing brand. Dinner conversation flowed through the usual channels. Maxwell's recent business trip to Tokyo, my mother's chairmanship of the hospital fundraiser, my father's new client who was changing the game in biotech investments. I contributed occasional comments about recent marine conservation legislation, which were met with polite nods before the conversation pivoted back to more substantial topics. As Angela served the main course, my father cleared his throat, the universal signal that an announcement was coming. "I've finalized arrangements for this year's summer cruise," he announced with unusual enthusiasm. 2 weeks aboard the Aurora Mariner through the Caribbean. Brand new ship, just launched this spring. Most exclusive liner in the fleet. My mother clapped her manicured hands together. "Richard, you've outdone yourself." The Hendersons and Caldwells tried to book and were told it was full for the season. "The Winchesters are joining us," my father continued. "Thomas just made partner at his law firm. And the Gregorys, their daughter Jennifer just got accepted to Yale Medical School." Maxwell leaned forward. "The Aurora Mariner has that infinity pool on the stern deck, right? And the chef from that Michelin-starred restaurant in New York." As they discussed luxury amenities and which social connections would be impressed by our access to this exclusive voyage, I found myself genuinely interested for the first time in years. The Caribbean meant coral reefs, marine protected areas, and ecosystems I'd studied, but rarely observed firsthand. "Does the itinerary include St. John?" I asked. "There's an amazing marine reserve there I've always wanted to visit." My mother's smile tightened. "Natalie, the point isn't to swim with fish. The Mariner has a world-class spa and shopping concierge." "I know, but between ports, I thought." "About that," my mother interrupted, exchanging glances with my father. "Your father and I have been discussing the passenger list." My father suddenly became very interested in cutting his perfectly cooked steak. "We're hosting several important business associates," my mother continued. "The Winchester's son Bradley is finishing his MBA at Wharton. The Gregorys will bring Jennifer to discuss her medical research." "Okay," I said slowly, not yet grasping her point. "The cruise is about networking, making connections, showcasing success," she said, her voice dropping to that gentle but firm tone she used when delivering unpleasant news. "Everyone will be discussing their accomplishments, their career trajectories." "Mother, just say what you mean. It might be uncomfortable for you, darling. Without a position at Williams Institute or anywhere really, questions about your work would be awkward." The table fell silent. Even Maxwell stopped chewing. "Are you saying I shouldn't come on the family cruise because I'm between jobs?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "We're saying this particular cruise is about celebrating achievement," my father interjected. "The timing isn't right with your current situation." "The ship's theme is literally excellence at sea," my mother added. "The invited families all have remarkable accomplishments to discuss." "And I don't," I stated flatly. "You've chosen a unique path," my mother said. "But this cruise is quite clear that it's for successful professionals." The invitation specifically mentioned achievement showcase, events throughout the voyage. Maxwell at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. Mom, Nat has a PhD. That's an achievement. In marine biology, my mother said with a dismissive wave. And what has it gotten her? Unemployment. This cruise is no place for failures, darling. I'm just being honest. The word failures hung in the air like a toxic cloud. I see, I said quietly. It's for the best, my mother continued, seemingly relieved to have the truth out. You'd be miserable trying to explain your situation to everyone. Better to sit this one out until you have something impressive to share. The remainder of dinner passed in a blur. I declined dessert, cited a non-existent early meeting the next day, and made my escape before tears could betray me. Driving home to Cambridge, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, I replayed my mother's words. No place for failures. After years of dismissing my academic achievements because they didn't align with the Parker blueprint for success, this explicit rejection still stung with surprising sharpness. I called Madison as soon as I got home. My best friend since undergraduate days at Brown, Madison had witnessed the Parker family dynamics firsthand and understood the unique pressure of never measuring up to impossible standards. They did what? Madison's outrage through the speakerphone was comforting as I changed into sweatpants and collapsed onto my couch. Apparently, I'd embarrassed the family on their achievement-themed cruise. I explained, trying for sarcasm but hearing the hurt in my voice. With your doctorate and research publications? Are they insane? You know that means nothing in Parkerland without the right job title and salary to match. The rejection letter from Williams just came yesterday, Nat. It's not like you've been unemployed for years. I sighed, pulling a blanket around my shoulders. The worst part is, I actually wanted to go on this one. The Caribbean has ecosystems I've only studied in labs. It would have been amazing to see them in person. Then go, Madison said firmly. Book your own trip. Better yet, apply for one of those research positions on cruise ships. You'd be more qualified than whoever they have. Right, because I can afford my own Caribbean cruise on my savings, I said. And those science positions on cruise lines are incredibly competitive. So what will you do? I stared at the ceiling, anger slowly replacing hurt. I don't know yet, but I'm tired of being the family failure when, by any normal standard, I'm actually doing pretty well. That's my girl, Madison said. Don't let them define you. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and stared at the rejection email from Williams Institute once more. Despite your impressive qualifications, we have selected another candidate whose research focus more closely aligns with our current funding priorities. For a moment, I allowed myself to wonder if my parents were right. If I'd chosen the wrong field, the wrong focus, the wrong definition of success. Then I straightened my shoulders and did what any self-respecting marine biologist would do when faced with rejection. I began researching alternatives. The next morning, fueled by equal parts determination and spite, I dove into research mode. If I couldn't attend the family cruise as Natalie Parker, disappointing daughter, perhaps there were other options. At minimum, I wanted to know what I was missing. What exactly made the Aurora Mariner so exclusive that it warranted the explicit exclusion of family failures? Coffee in hand, I navigated to the cruise line's website. The Aurora Mariner was indeed impressive. A brand new vessel with state-of-the-art amenities, multiple restaurants, entertainment venues, and luxury staterooms. As I scrolled through glossy photos of infinity pools and champagne bars, something in the About Us section caught my eye. Committed to sustainable cruising practices and marine conservation efforts. Interesting. Most luxury cruise lines paid lip service to environmental concerns these days, but something about the wording seemed more substantial than typical corporate greenwashing. I clicked through to the parent company information and felt my heart skip a beat. 3 months ago, Atlantic Star Cruises had been acquired by Oceanic Preservation Holdings, a conglomerate with significant investments in marine conservation. That was unexpected for a luxury cruise line known for excess rather than environmental consciousness. Curiosity piqued, I dug deeper. Oceanic Preservation Holdings wasn't a familiar name in my field, suggesting it was either new or operating under a different public identity. I searched academic databases, conservation forums, and industry news, finding scattered references, but nothing substantial. I needed more information. This called for insider knowledge. Dr. Reeves, my doctoral advisor at Brown, maintained extensive connections throughout the marine science community. I sent him an email asking about Oceanic Preservation Holdings and its recent acquisition of Atlantic Star Cruises. His response came surprisingly quickly. Interesting you should ask about OPH. They've been making waves lately, pun intended. Can you stop by my office tomorrow? There's someone you should meet. The next afternoon, I found myself in Dr. Reeves' cluttered office at Brown's Marine Science Center. Books, research papers, and coral specimens competed for space on every surface. Dr. Reeves, with his perpetual tan and salt and pepper beard, had been my mentor and champion throughout my academic journey. Natalie. Perfect timing, he greeted me, gesturing to a woman examining a reef model on his bookshelf. This is Dr. Rebecca Winters from the Global Marine Conservation Trust. Dr. Winters turned, revealing a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a practical bob and a warm smile. Natalie Parker? Your work on coral resilience factors in changing ocean chemistry was brilliant. I blinked in surprise. You're familiar with my research? Very much so. In fact, it's part of why I'm here. Over the next hour, Dr. Winters explained that Global Marine Conservation Trust was the public arm of Oceanic Preservation Holdings, established by a coalition of environmentally conscious investors. Their recent acquisition of Atlantic Star Cruises was part of a bold initiative to transform luxury tourism into a vehicle for conservation awareness and research. The Aurora Mariner is our flagship project, Dr. Winters explained. First luxury vessel designed from keel to mast with sustainability in mind. Hidden from passengers' view are water reclamation systems, advanced waste management, energy-efficient propulsion, and more. That's impressive, I acknowledged, but luxury cruises still have massive environmental footprints. Exactly why we needed to enter this space, she nodded. We can't change the industry from the outside. The Aurora includes something else unique, a fully equipped marine research lab and an education center. Each cruise hosts conservation specialists who conduct research during the voyage and offer programming for interested passengers. Dr. Reeves grinned at me. Tell her about the coral restoration program, Rebecca. Dr. Winters' eyes lit up. The Aurora's Caribbean itinerary includes stops at our coral nursery sites. We're implementing a restoration program based on research about resilient coral species that can withstand changing ocean conditions. A strange suspicion began forming in my mind. This restoration program, it wouldn't happen to focus on identifying genetic markers in coral species that demonstrate resistance to temperature fluctuations and acidification, would it? Dr. Winters looked surprised. That's precisely our approach. How did you know? I exchanged glances with Dr. Reeves, who was trying not to smile too broadly. Because that was the focus of my doctoral research, I replied slowly. My dissertation identified several genetic markers in Caribbean coral species that indicated resilience to environmental stressors. Which is why I connected you two, Dr. Reeves interjected. Rebecca mentioned their research foundation, and I recognized the methodology immediately. Natalie, they're essentially implementing your research model. We certainly are, Dr. Winters confirmed. Your papers were foundational to our approach. Dr. Amanda Hayes cited them extensively when designing our program. Amanda Hayes? I nearly spilled my coffee. She was my research partner at Brown. We co-authored those papers. And now she's our director of marine conservation programs, Dr. Winters smiled. Small world, isn't it? My mind raced. Amanda and I had been close during our doctoral program, but had gradually lost touch as our careers took different paths. She had opted for applied conservation work while I pursued pure research. I hadn't known she'd landed such a prestigious position. Is Amanda working on the Aurora Mariner? I asked, trying to process this cascade of connections. She oversees all our shipboard programs, Dr. Winters nodded. In fact, she'll be aboard for the maiden Caribbean voyage next month, supervising the launch of our passenger education initiative. Next month, the same cruise my family would be on. The cruise I'd been deemed too much of a failure to attend. Dr. Winters pulled out a business card. Natalie, we're always looking for qualified scientists to join our programs. Your research quite literally formed the basis for our restoration approach. Would you be interested in connecting with Amanda about opportunities with us? Would I be interested in joining the cruise that my status-conscious family had barred me from? The cruise implementing the research they dismissed as impractical? The cruise where I'd arrive not as the unemployed disappointment, but as a respected scientific advisor? I would be very interested, I replied, accepting the card with what I hoped was professional composure rather than vindictive glee. Very interested indeed. After exchanging contact information and promises to follow up soon, Dr. Winters departed for another meeting, leaving me alone with Dr. Reeves. Quite a coincidence, he remarked, eyes twinkling behind his glasses. Isn't it just? I agreed, still processing the implications. My family is booked on that exact cruise. The one where my research is being implemented. The one they've uninvited me from because I'm not successful enough. Dr. Reeves leaned back in his chair. The universe works in mysterious ways, Natalie. Or ironic ones, I murmured, already composing an email to Amanda in my head. That evening, I called Amanda directly, bypassing professional formalities in light of our history. Natalie Parker. Amanda's voice bubbled with genuine warmth. Rebecca told me she met you today. This is incredible timing. You have no idea, I replied, and explained my family situation and their upcoming cruise on the Aurora Mariner. Amanda's laughter rang through the phone. You're kidding. That's beyond perfect. Listen, we need specialists for that voyage anyway. How would you feel about joining as a consulting researcher? You'd work with our education team, give a few presentations to passengers about coral conservation, and help with data collection during port visits. That sounds amazing, I admitted. But wouldn't it be awkward hiring someone with a personal connection to passengers? Natalie, your research is literally the foundation of our program. If anything, it's awkward we hadn't contacted you sooner. This is a paid consulting position with potential for ongoing collaboration. Your family connection is irrelevant to your qualifications. As Amanda outlined the details of the position, compensation, and responsibilities, a plan began crystallizing in my mind. This wasn't just an opportunity to see Caribbean marine ecosystems firsthand or to transition my theoretical research into practical application. This was a chance to redefine success on my own terms, and perhaps open my family's eyes to a different kind of achievement along the way. Over the next 3 weeks, I threw myself into preparing for the Aurora Mariner voyage with the same intensity I'd applied to my doctoral research. This wasn't just about professional opportunity or petty revenge, it was about standing firmly in my own worth. Amanda sent over the consultant contract, complete with a generous stipend that actually exceeded what I would have earned for a month at the Williams Institute. The irony wasn't lost on me that my failure had led to a position potentially more aligned with my research goals than the fellowship I'd been rejected from. You'll be assigned a premium stateroom on Deck 9, Amanda explained during our planning call. Staff accommodations, but honestly nicer than what most passengers get on standard cruises. The research lab is on Deck 3, and you'll have access to all passenger areas for your educational outreach. What exactly will my responsibilities include? I asked, taking careful notes. 3 components, Amanda replied. First, you'll assist with data collection during our port visits to coral restoration sites. Second, you'll help develop passenger education materials about marine conservation. And third, you'll give 2 public presentations about coral resilience research. My stomach fluttered at the third item. Presentations to passengers? Including my family? Your presentation will be optional for passengers, Amanda assured me. But yes, potentially including your family. Is that going to be a problem? I took a deep breath. No. Actually, it's perfect. The next phase of preparation involved assembling an appropriate wardrobe. As much as I hated to admit it, my mother's fixation on appearance had some practical application here. I'd be interacting with wealthy passengers while simultaneously needing functional attire for field research. Madison accompanied me shopping, providing moral support and practical advice. You need a power look for your presentations, she insisted as we browsed a sustainable clothing boutique in Cambridge. Something that says, I'm saving the oceans and looking fabulous doing it. I emerged with several professional outfits suitable for shipboard presentations, lightweight technical clothing for field work, and one knockout dress for formal night that Madison insisted was necessary for the dramatic reveal. You realize this isn't actually a movie, right? I laughed as she held up the blue cocktail dress that admittedly matched my eyes perfectly. Trust me, Madison insisted. When you walk into that formal dinner, you want your family's jaws on the floor. Revenge is a dish best served with excellent accessories. Beyond clothing, I spent hours updating my presentation materials, converting complex research into engaging content for non-scientific audiences. Amanda had emphasized that passenger education was a key component of the oceanic preservation mission. We're not just preaching to the choir, she'd explained. We want to reach people who might never otherwise engage with marine conservation. Show them why it matters. I also prepared myself emotionally for the inevitable family confrontation. I decided not to inform them in advance about my position on the cruise. The element of surprise seemed appropriate given their ambush at the family dinner. A week before departure, Maxwell called. His name on my phone screen triggered a moment of hesitation before I answered. Hey, Nat, he said, his voice carrying that particular tone of forced casualness that meant he was uncomfortable. Just checking in. Haven't heard from you since dinner. I've been busy, I replied neutrally. Right, sure. He cleared his throat. Listen about the cruise thing. I told Mom that was a really crappy way to handle it. Did you? It wasn't a question. For what it's worth, I think you should be there. I mean, it's a family vacation. Apparently not for failures like me, I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. Maxwell sighed. You know how they are. Image-obsessed. Dad's invited half his client list, and Mom's treating it like a floating society gala. And how do you feel about it, Max? I challenged. Do you also think I'd embarrass the family with my lack of prestigious employment? That's not fair, Nat. I've always supported your marine biology thing. My marine biology thing is my career, Maxwell. My doctorate isn't a hobby. I know. He paused. So, you're definitely not coming then? I allowed myself a small smile he couldn't see. I wouldn't say that. What does that mean? It means I need to go. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Nat, wait. Enjoy the cruise, Maxwell. I have a feeling it's going to be memorable. I hung up feeling a complex mix of emotions. Maxwell wasn't the villain in this scenario. He was as much a product of our parents' value system as I was, just one who happened to fit the mold they'd created. Still, his passive acceptance of their treatment of me stung. The night before my flight to Miami, where I'd board the Aurora Mariner, I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by suitcases and research materials. The familiar pre-trip anxiety mingled with unique apprehension about the coming confrontation. Was I being petty? Unprofessional? Should I have simply accepted my family's rejection and moved on? I picked up a framed photo from my coffee table, me at my PhD graduation, grinning widely in my regalia. My parents stood stiffly beside me, their smiles not quite reaching their eyes. Maxwell had his arm around my shoulders, genuinely proud but still not fully understanding why I'd chosen this path. This isn't about revenge, I told myself firmly, placing the photo in my carry-on. This is about standing in my truth. If my family couldn't recognize the value in my work, perhaps seeing it validated by others, seeing it literally shape the policies of a company they admired, would finally open their eyes. And if not, at least I would know I'd stood up for myself and my choices. I sent a final email to Amanda confirming my arrival details, then checked that my presentation materials were safely backed up in multiple locations. Everything was in place. The stage was set. The Aurora Mariner awaited. And Natalie Parker, family failure, was about to make quite an entrance. Miami's port bustled with activity as I approached the Aurora Mariner. The ship dominated the harbor, a gleaming white leviathan with sleek lines and multiple tiers of balconies reflecting the Florida sunshine. Crew members in crisp uniforms directed the flow of arriving passengers, most dragging designer luggage and wearing expressions of entitled anticipation. Unlike the regular passengers queuing at the main gangway, I followed Amanda's instructions to the staff entrance, where a security officer checked my credentials. "Dr. Parker, welcome aboard," he said, scanning my consultant badge. "Ms. Hayes asked me to escort you to your stateroom." The interior of the Aurora Mariner revealed the dual nature of its design. While the passenger areas showcased expected luxury, crystal chandeliers, plush carpeting, marble accents, I noticed subtle environmental messaging integrated throughout. Digital displays disguised as decorative elements showed real-time data on the ship's energy usage, water conservation, and carbon footprint. Artwork featured marine ecosystems alongside discrete informational plaques. My stateroom exceeded Amanda's description. Though smaller than the premium passenger suites, it featured a private balcony, queen bed, sitting area, and bathroom stocked with eco-friendly amenities. A welcome packet contained my schedule, ship map, and staff access card. I had barely begun unpacking when my phone chimed with a text from Amanda. "Welcome aboard. Meet me in the research lab, deck 3 aft, when you're settled. Passenger boarding, still underway. Your family hasn't arrived yet." The research lab was a revelation, a fully equipped marine science facility hidden beneath the passenger decks. Glass tanks housed coral specimens, advanced microscopes lined workstations, and a wall of monitors displayed data from underwater sensors deployed around the ship. Amanda greeted me with a warm hug. In the 5 years since we'd worked together, she'd cut her auburn hair into a practical bob and acquired the confident bearing of someone who'd found her professional niche. "This is incredible," I said, gesturing to the lab. I had no idea cruise ships could accommodate research facilities like this. "Most don't," Amanda grinned. "That's what makes the Aurora special. We're redefining what luxury cruising can be." She checked her watch. "The Parker party checked in about 20 minutes ago. They should be settling into their suites now." My stomach tightened. "So, it begins. How do you want to handle this? We could arrange a controlled introduction or—" "No." I shook my head. "Let it happen naturally. I'm here as a professional consultant, not as Richard and Eleanor Parker's daughter." "Fair enough," Amanda nodded. "In that case, you should know there's a welcome reception for premium passengers in the Celestial Lounge at 7. Your family will almost certainly attend." "Then I should too," I replied, straightening my shoulders. "Professionally speaking, of course." "Of course," Amanda smirked. "Now let me show you the rest of your domain." The afternoon passed in orientation. Touring the education center, where I'd give presentations, reviewing research protocols for our port excursions, and meeting other members of the conservation team. By the time I returned to my stateroom to prepare for the evening reception, I felt grounded in my professional role. I selected a navy blue blazer over a simple white blouse and tailored pants, conservative enough for a business function but distinctly different from the cocktail attire passengers would wear. My consultant badge completed the look, with Dr. Natalie Parker, Marine Conservation Specialist, prominently displayed. The Celestial Lounge occupied the ship's forward section on Deck 11, offering panoramic views of Miami's skyline as sunset painted the horizon in vivid orange and pink. Servers circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres while a string quartet played softly in the background. I spotted my family immediately. My mother in Chanel, my father in his tailored suit, and Maxwell chatting with people I recognized as the Winchesters. They hadn't noticed me yet, giving me a moment to steady my nerves. Amanda peered at my elbow, professional in her Atlantic Star Cruises uniform with director's stripes. "Ready for this?" "As I'll ever be," I murmured. "Dr. Parker," she said formally, loud enough to carry, "would you mind explaining our coral restoration initiative to Mr. Harrington? He's expressed interest in our conservation efforts." Heads turned at the mention of my title. I followed Amanda toward an elderly gentleman near the windows, deliberately passing close to my brother's position. Maxwell noticed me first. His double take was almost comical, eyes widening, champagne glass freezing midway to his lips. "Natalie," he blurted, loud enough to attract my parents' attention. I turned, adopting an expression of mild surprise. "Maxwell, what a coincidence. Are you enjoying the ship so far?" My mother's face performed a remarkable transition from confusion to shock to barely concealed horror. My father simply stared, his usual composed demeanor momentarily abandoned. "What are you doing here?" My mother finally managed, her social smile strained to breaking point. "Working," I replied pleasantly, gesturing to my badge. "I'm consulting with the ship's marine conservation program." "Consulting," my father repeated, as if the word were foreign. Amanda stepped forward smoothly. "Dr. Parker's expertise in coral reef resilience is invaluable to our program. We're fortunate she was available for this voyage." She extended her hand. "Amanda Hayes, Director of Marine Conservation Programs for Oceanic Preservation Holdings. You must be Natalie's family." My mother's social training kicked in automatically as she shook Amanda's hand. "Eleanor Parker. This is my husband Richard and our son Maxwell." "Pleasure to meet you," Amanda said warmly. "Your daughter's research forms the foundation of our Caribbean Conservation Initiative. She'll be giving several presentations during the voyage. You must be very proud." The cognitive dissonance playing across my mother's face was almost painful to watch. "Yes, of course," she managed. "Natalie has always been dedicated to her interests." "More than interests, Mrs. Parker," Amanda corrected gently. "Dr. Parker's published work on genetic markers in resilient coral species is pioneering in the field. If you'll excuse us, I need to introduce her to some of our investors." As Amanda led me away, I caught Maxwell's stunned expression and my father's calculating look, the one he wore when reassessing a business situation. The remainder of the reception passed in a blur of introductions and brief explanations of our conservation work. I maintained professional composure while acutely aware of my family watching from across the room, huddled in what appeared to be intense discussion. The formal welcome dinner that evening provided the next opportunity for confrontation. Unlike the casual reception, dinner seating was assigned, with my family placed at a table with the Winchesters and another couple I didn't recognize. My conservation team was seated across the dining room, allowing me temporary reprieve. Between the main course and dessert, however, my mother materialized beside my chair, social smile firmly in place. "Natalie, darling, might I have a word in private?" I excused myself from my colleagues and followed her to a quiet alcove off the main dining room. The moment we were alone, her facade cracked. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" she hissed. "My job," I replied calmly. "I was hired because of my expertise." "This is beyond inappropriate. You deliberately misled us." "I didn't mislead anyone, Mother. You assumed I wouldn't be on this cruise because I didn't meet your definition of success. I simply didn't correct your assumption." "You're here to embarrass us," she accused. "I'm here to work," I countered. "My presence on this ship has nothing to do with you and everything to do with my professional qualifications." "Which conveniently placed you on the exact cruise your family is taking." "Don't insult my intelligence, Natalie. The Aurora Mariner is implementing conservation programs based on my research," I explained, maintaining a level tone. "I was recruited specifically because of my expertise. That your social event happens to occur on the same vessel is coincidental, if admittedly ironic." My mother's eyes narrowed. "Your father has invested significantly in this voyage, financially and socially. Whatever game you're playing, this isn't a game, Mother. This is my career. The career you and Father have dismissed as impractical and unsuccessful." I took a deep breath. "Did it ever occur to you that your definition of success might be limited?" Before she could respond, the ship's cruise director approached with a warm smile. "Dr. Parker, just the person I was looking for. Captain Reynolds would like to introduce you before tomorrow's presentation. He's quite excited about our conservation initiatives." My mother's expression froze at the deferential way he addressed me. "Of course," I replied professionally. "Please let the captain know I'd be honored." As the cruise director departed, My mother studied me with new uncertainty. How exactly are you connected to this ship's programs? Perhaps you should attend my presentation tomorrow, I suggested. You might learn something interesting. I returned to my table, leaving her standing in the alcove with an expression I'd never seen before, something between confusion and the dawning of respect. Later that evening, as I prepared for bed, a knock came at my stateroom door. I opened it to find my father, still in his dinner attire, minus the jacket. "May I come in?" he asked, his business tone in place. I stepped aside, allowing him into the sitting area of my stateroom. He surveyed the room, noting the research materials spread across the desk and the professional attire hanging in the open closet. "Your mother is upset. I gathered that. She feels ambushed. That's ironic, considering how the family dinner went last month." My father sighed, looking suddenly older. "I've been speaking with Thomas Winchester. He mentioned Oceanic Preservation Holdings' acquisition of Atlantic Star Cruises. Apparently, it was a major investment opportunity that several of his clients pursued. Of course, he would approach this from a business angle. The conservation program on this ship," he continued, "he says it's revolutionary for the industry. Something about sustainable luxury tourism being the next big market." "That's one way to look at it," I acknowledged. "And your research," he says, "it's central to their coral restoration initiative." His gaze was assessing, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. "Why didn't you tell us your work had commercial applications?" "Because its value isn't in its commercial applications," I replied. "Its value is in protecting endangered ecosystems that sustain ocean health. The fact that it can also be marketed to eco-conscious luxury travelers is secondary." He frowned slightly, still trying to translate my work into his framework of value. "Amanda Hayes, you knew her before?" "We were research partners at Brown. We co-authored the papers that form the basis for the ship's conservation approach." "I see." He was quiet for a moment. "Your presentation tomorrow, what will it cover?" "The importance of coral reef ecosystems, the threats they face, and our approach to identifying and propagating resilient species." He nodded slowly. "I'll be there. Your mother, too." As he moved toward the door, he paused. "Natalie, I don't pretend to understand your field. But I recognize when someone commands professional respect." He gestured to the ship around us. "This is unexpected." It wasn't an apology, but from Richard Parker, it was significant acknowledgement. The next morning brought the most public confrontation yet. The Aurora's main theater was nearly full for my presentation, Coral Reefs, Ecosystems at the Crossroads. From the stage, I could see my parents and Maxwell seated near the back, my mother rigid with tension, my father attentive, Maxwell actually taking notes. Captain Reynolds introduced me with unexpected enthusiasm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to have Dr. Natalie Parker sharing her expertise today. Her groundbreaking research on coral resilience directly informed the conservation programs that make the Aurora Mariner unique in the cruise industry. Dr. Parker's work is helping us protect the very environments we visit, ensuring they remain vibrant for future generations to enjoy." As I took the stage, I felt a curious calm. This wasn't about my family anymore. This was about the work itself, work I believed in, work that mattered. For the next 40 minutes, I presented the science behind coral reef ecosystems, their critical importance to ocean health, and the innovative approaches we were implementing to protect vulnerable species. The audience was engaged, asking thoughtful questions and expressing genuine interest. When I concluded to enthusiastic applause, I caught my mother's expression, a complex mixture of surprise and something that might, just possibly, have been pride. The morning after my presentation, I led a small group of interested passengers on a behind-the-scenes tour of the research facilities. To my surprise, my father was among them, asking detailed questions about the practical applications of our conservation efforts. "The investment potential in sustainable tourism is significant," he remarked as we examined coral samples in the lab. I hadn't realized how developed the science had become. "It's still evolving," I explained, "but the data is compelling. Preserving marine ecosystems isn't just environmentally sound, it's economically viable long-term." My father nodded thoughtfully. You speak about this differently than your academic papers. More accessible. Part of my job here is translating complex research into content that resonates with non-scientists, I explained. The science matters, but people need to understand why they should care. Later that afternoon, as the ship docked at our first Caribbean port, I prepared for the scheduled coral restoration site visit. Amanda had arranged for interested passengers to observe our team's work at an underwater nursery where we were cultivating resilient coral species for transplantation to damaged reef areas. My mother appeared on the dock as we were organizing equipment, looking distinctly out of place in her resort wear amid our technical gear. "Mother," I acknowledged, surprised. "Did you want something?" She gestured vaguely at the dive boats. "I thought I might observe what you're doing today." I blinked in astonishment. "You want to come to the coral nursery? Is that not allowed?" she asked stiffly. "It's allowed," I assured her. "I'm just surprised you're interested. Several people at breakfast were discussing yesterday's presentation," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. The Gregory's daughter Jennifer was quite impressed. "She said your approach to genetic identification was brilliantly intuitive or some such term." Ah, now I understood. My work had received social validation from people my mother respected. "Well, you're welcome to join us," I said. "Though you should know it involves a glass-bottom boat rather than shopping." A flash of my mother's old impatience surfaced. "I'm not completely shallow, Natalie." I bit back a sarcastic response. "Of course not. We depart in 20 minutes if you'd like to change into something more suitable." I handed her a list of recommended attire. To my continued surprise, she reappeared 15 minutes later in appropriate clothing, accompanied by my father and Maxwell. "Family excursion?" I asked, unable to keep the irony from my voice. "Professional interest," my father corrected. "The Winchesters and Harringtons are joining as well." "Of course. Business networking even here." The excursion proved unexpectedly transformative. Through the glass-bottom boat, passengers observed our team documenting coral growth, collecting samples, and measuring environmental parameters. I provided commentary, explaining our methodology and goals. These specific coral genotypes have demonstrated remarkable resilience to increased temperatures and acidification, I explained, pointing to flourishing colonies. By identifying and propagating these naturally adaptive specimens, we're essentially accelerating evolution to help reefs survive changing conditions. "And this approach came from your research?" Mr. Harrington asked, his interest clearly piqued. "Dr. Parker's doctoral work established the genetic markers we use to identify resilient specimens," Amanda confirmed. "Her methodology is now being implemented at similar sites throughout the Caribbean." I caught my brother's surprised expression. "You developed this whole system, Nat?" he asked quietly. "The identification framework, yes," I acknowledged. "The practical implementation has evolved through collaboration with conservation partners." Throughout the excursion, I watched my family's perception visibly shift. My mother observed the deference with which other passengers treated me. My father noted the business representatives expressing interest in supporting our work. Maxwell simply watched me in my element, perhaps for the first time seeing my passion as legitimate expertise rather than an eccentric hobby. That evening, the ship hosted a formal cocktail reception for major donors to the conservation program. As a key consultant, I attended in my professional capacity, wearing the blue dress Madison had insisted upon. Amanda had arranged for me to speak briefly about our port visit findings. I was discussing water quality parameters with a retired oceanography professor when Maxwell approached, looking uncomfortable in his tuxedo despite having worn similar attire countless times at family events. "You look nice," he offered awkwardly. "Thanks. You clean up well yourself." He fiddled with his cufflinks, a nervous habit from childhood. "Listen, Nat, I've been thinking about what you said before the cruise. About your marine biology thing being your actual career. And I guess I never really understood what you actually did. It always seemed so abstract, as opposed to moving numbers between accounts." I couldn't resist asking. He had the grace to look sheepish. "Fair point. I just meant seeing you today explaining complex concepts, leading research activities. You're really good at this. Like, world-class good, apparently. Thank you, Maxwell. That almost sounds like respect. It is respect, he said seriously. And I owe you an apology for not showing it sooner. Before I could respond, Amanda called for the room's attention and introduced the ship's captain for a special announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Reynolds began. Atlantic Star Cruises and Oceanic Preservation Holdings are proud to announce the expansion of our conservation initiatives to all vessels in our fleet over the next 3 years. Applause rippled through the gathering. This ambitious program began with research conducted at Brown University by Dr. Natalie Parker and Dr. Amanda Hayes. He continued, gesturing to us. Their groundbreaking work in identifying resilient coral species has created a scientific framework that balances environmental protection with sustainable tourism. My parents, standing near the back of the gathering, were watching with expressions I couldn't quite interpret. Dr. Parker, would you share a few words about today's site visit? The captain invited. Stepping forward, I summarized our findings concisely, emphasizing the visible progress at the restoration site and the importance of continued monitoring. The thriving colonies we observe today demonstrate that targeted conservation efforts can succeed even in challenging conditions, I concluded. By protecting these ecosystems, we're preserving not just environmental treasures but economic resources that sustain coastal communities throughout the Caribbean. The applause was enthusiastic, particularly from a group of investment bankers who recognized the dual value proposition. As the formal presentation concluded and the reception resumed, my father approached, my mother beside him. That was impressive, Natalie, he said, his tone measured but genuine. Thomas Winchester tells me Oceanic Preservation Holdings is attracting significant investment interest. Of course, he would focus on that aspect. Their approach is innovative, I acknowledged. Integrating conservation with luxury experiences reaches people who might otherwise never engage with environmental issues. Your presentation yesterday and your comments today were very articulate, my mother added, her compliment clearly costing her some effort. Thank you. The Gregorys asked if you might join us for dinner tomorrow night, she continued. Jennifer is quite interested in your research methodology. Translation. Someone my mother respected had validated my work, elevating its status in her eyes. I'd be happy to, I replied, though I should mention I have staff responsibilities until 8. We'll arrange a later seating, my mother said, the casual adjustment a subtle but significant acknowledgement of my professional standing. As the reception continued, I noticed a shift in how my family positioned themselves, gradually closer to me, occasionally referring other guests to my daughter, Dr. Parker, or my sister, the marine biologist. The transformation was both satisfying and slightly amusing. Later that evening, a knock came at my stateroom door. I opened it to find Aunt Catherine, elegant as always in a simple black dress. I wondered when you'd appear. I smiled, hugging her warmly. I've been watching from the sidelines, she admitted, entering my room. Didn't want to interrupt your professional triumph. You knew I was working on this cruise? I asked, surprised. Not specifically, she laughed. But I knew Amanda Hayes had joined Oceanic Preservation Holdings last year and was implementing coral research that sounded remarkably like your work. When Richard mentioned this cruise, I suspected an interesting coincidence might be in the making. And you didn't warn them? And spoil the show? Aunt Catherine's eyes twinkled. Not a chance. We settled into the sitting area, and I poured us both tea. Your mother is experiencing some significant cognitive dissonance, Aunt Catherine observed. She's built her entire value system around a very narrow definition of success. Seeing you respected by people she respects is forcing a rather uncomfortable recalibration. I noticed, I said dryly. Dad seems to be adjusting faster, now that he sees business potential in conservation. Richard understands value creation. He's simply expanding his understanding of what creates value. Aunt Catherine sipped her tea thoughtfully. Maxwell appears genuinely impressed. He actually apologized for not respecting my work sooner. Growth. Aunt Catherine nodded approvingly. Though I expect your parents' adjustment may take longer. I'm not expecting miracles, I acknowledged. Just recognition that my path has validity. From what I observed tonight, you've achieved that and more. She leaned forward. Amanda mentioned they're expanding the program fleet-wide. Will you be involved going forward? She's offered me a permanent position, I admitted. Conservation Program Specialist, overseeing coral initiatives throughout the Caribbean. Will you take it? I hesitated. It's tempting. The work is meaningful, the compensation excellent. But I'm not sure if I'm accepting for the right reasons. Which would be professional growth versus proving something to my family. Aunt Catherine nodded, understanding. A valid concern. Though consider this. Perhaps the universe arranged this confluence of events not just to validate your path to your family, but to show you a path you might not have considered otherwise. That's remarkably philosophical, Aunt Catherine. I contain multitudes, she smiled. Now tell me more about these resilient coral species. My investment group has been looking into sustainable tourism ventures, and I find myself suddenly quite interested in marine conservation. The final night of the cruise featured a captain's dinner in the ship's grand ballroom. Circular tables dotted the space, each impeccably set with fine china, crystal, and elaborate floral centerpieces. A string quartet played softly as passengers in formal attire mingled before taking their assigned seats. My family had requested that I join their table, which now included the Gregorys, Aunt Catherine, and Amanda Hayes, a seating arrangement that would have been unimaginable 2 weeks earlier. I arrived last, having completed my final conservation team meeting. The blue dress had proven its worth throughout the voyage, earning compliments even from my style-conscious mother. Natalie, perfect timing, my father greeted me, standing as I approached, a small courtesy he'd never shown before. We were just discussing the potential expansion of the coral restoration program. Jennifer has been telling us about similar initiatives in the Pacific, my mother added, gesturing to the Gregory's daughter. Apparently, your research methodology has applications beyond the Caribbean. That's the hope, I acknowledged, taking my seat. The genetic markers we've identified appear consistent across geographic regions, though environmental factors differ significantly. Dinner conversation flowed with surprising ease, ranging from conservation science to business applications to travel experiences. For the first time in memory, I participated in family discussion as an equal, my expertise respected rather than tolerated. Between the main course and dessert, Amanda tapped her glass for attention. I have an announcement that seems appropriate to share here first, she smiled. Oceanic Preservation Holdings has approved expansion of our Coral Resilience Program to all Caribbean itineraries, with further expansion to Pacific routes next year. Polite applause circled the table. Additionally, she continued, we're establishing a dedicated research division to support this work, with permanent staff positions and academic partnerships. She turned to me. Dr. Parker, we'd like to formally offer you the position of Director of Coral Conservation Research, overseeing both our shipboard programs and land-based nursery operations. I felt the table's attention focus intensely on me. That's a significant opportunity, I managed, genuinely surprised by the title and scope. One you're uniquely qualified for, Amanda confirmed. Your research forms the foundation of our approach, and your ability to communicate complex science to diverse audiences is exceptional. The position would be based in Miami, with regular research voyages throughout the year. Congratulations, Natalie, my father said, his tone carrying unexpected warmth. A director position with a growth phase organization is impressive at your age. My mother's reaction was equally surprising. Miami has an excellent art scene, she observed. And direct flights to Boston. I recognized these comments for what they were, my parents' version of approval, translated into their value language. I'd like to review the details, of course, I told Amanda, but I'm definitely interested. Later that evening, I found myself on the promenade deck, watching moonlight shimmer on the Caribbean waters. The past 2 weeks had transformed not just my professional prospects, but my understanding of success and validation. My father joined me at the railing, looking uncharacteristically reflective. Beautiful night, he observed. It is. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment before he spoke again. I've been thinking about our conversation before the cruise, about what constitutes failure. I turned to face him, and I may have applied an overly narrow metric. He adjusted his cufflinks, the nervous gesture Maxwell had inherited. Your mother and I built our lives around certain markers of achievement: financial security, social standing, institutional affiliation. I know, Dad. What I failed to recognize was that those markers are simply proxies for something more fundamental: impact. He gestured toward the ocean. Your work has tangible impact. It's creating value, just not in the form I immediately recognized. Coming from Richard Parker, this was practically an emotional soliloquy. Thank you for saying that, I said quietly. I've set up a meeting with Oceanic Preservation's investment team, he continued, reverting to more comfortable territory. There may be opportunities to support expansion of these conservation initiatives. I smiled. Converting to environmentalism, Dad? Converting to recognizing good business when I see it, he corrected, though his slight smile softened the statement. Sustainable luxury is a growing market segment with significant upside potential. And the actual environmental benefits? A positive externality, he acknowledged, though perhaps more central to the value proposition than I previously understood. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was honest progress. The ship docked in Miami the following morning, passengers dispersing to waiting transportation. My family had arranged a private car, and to my surprise, assumed I would join them for the ride to the airport. You'll need to visit Boston soon to pack up your apartment, my mother said matter-of-factly as our luggage was loaded. Though I suppose you could hire a service. I haven't formally accepted the position yet, Mother, I reminded her. But you will, she stated confidently. It's an excellent opportunity. Director level, with both research and management components. I caught Aunt Catherine's amused glance from the front seat. The conservation focus is ideal given your background, my mother continued. And Miami has wonderful cultural institutions. The symphony is quite good, I understand. My father lowered his phone. I've already spoken with our real estate contact about waterfront condominiums. As a director, you'll need appropriate accommodation. Dad, I can find my own place, I protested. Of course you can, he agreed easily. But the market moves quickly, and I have excellent contacts. No harm in exploring options. As my parents discussed Miami real estate with the casual authority they applied to all life decisions, I realized their approach hadn't fundamentally changed. They were simply incorporating my new status into their existing framework. Now that I qualified as successful by their metrics, they would support me with the same intensity they'd previously directed toward pushing me toward their definition of achievement. Maxwell caught my eye and shrugged slightly, acknowledging the irony. They mean well, he murmured. In their way. I know, I sighed. That's what makes it complicated. 1 year later, I stood on the deck of another Atlantic Star vessel, watching passengers board for a conservation-themed cruise through the Eastern Caribbean. As Director of Coral Conservation Research, I now oversaw programs on 6 ships, with expansion planned for 3 more the following year. My apartment in Miami, found without my father's real estate connections, though he'd insisted on reviewing the contract, overlooked Biscayne Bay. My research team had grown to include 12 specialists working throughout the Caribbean basin. The Williams Institute, which had rejected my fellowship application, had recently approached me about a collaborative research initiative. My parents had visited twice, my mother bringing designer housewares for my bachelor girl apartment, while my father arranged meetings with potentially valuable contacts in Miami's business community. Their acceptance of my path remained filtered through their value system, but the underlying respect was genuine. This particular cruise was special, a Parker family vacation, the first since the Aurora Mariner voyage that had changed everything. My parents had specifically requested one of my ships, as they now referred to vessels implementing my conservation program. Natalie, my mother waved from the boarding gangway, elegant as always in cruise-appropriate designer wear. My father beside her, checking his watch out of habit rather than impatience. Maxwell followed with his new girlfriend Sophie, a pediatric surgeon he'd met through Jennifer Gregory, a connection that would never have formed without last year's revelations. "Welcome aboard," I greeted them, now comfortable in my dual role as family member and shipboard authority. "We've arranged something special for this voyage." I led them to the ship's education center, where an exhibition on coral reef ecosystems now featured a dedicated display, the Parker Resilience Initiative, detailing our expanded conservation program and its origins in my doctoral research. My mother actually teared up, an unprecedented display of emotion in public. "Well," she said, composing herself quickly, "this is quite an accomplishment." My father studied the corporate sponsors listed on the display. "Impressive partnerships. Your program has attracted significant support. The science is compelling," I acknowledged. "And the business case for preservation is increasingly clear." "We're proud of you, Nat," Maxwell said simply. "Really proud." That evening, as the ship sailed from Miami toward our first restoration site, I found a moment of quiet reflection on the observation deck. The journey from family failure to respected professional had been less about changing my parents' minds than about standing firmly in my own definition of success. The validation I'd sought had ultimately come not from family approval but from the impact of my work, the growing coral colonies, the protected ecosystems, the shift in how luxury tourism interacted with fragile environments. My parents would always measure achievement through their particular lens. But they had expanded that lens to include my path, however imperfectly. And I had learned that true success came not from external validation but from alignment between values and actions. The moon rose over the horizon, illuminating the ship's wake in silver. Tomorrow I would lead my family to see the thriving coral nursery their cruise fees were helping to support. My mother would take photos for her social circle, my father would discuss investment opportunities with other passengers, and Maxwell would ask genuinely interested questions about the science. Not perfect understanding, but a new kind of family ecosystem, one with room for different definitions of success, different measures of worth, different paths to fulfillment. How has your family's definition of success impacted your choices? Have you ever had to stand up for your own vision of achievement? Drop a comment below to share your experience. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to hear more stories of personal triumph, and share with someone who might need encouragement to follow their own path. Remember, true success comes from living authentically according to your own values, not someone else's expectations. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you find the courage to define success on your own terms.